Tony Garea. Now let's put a little bit of context, or actually a blueprint for all this. Most, if not all, these people that ever been agents are former workers, and especially former workers in WWE. A lot of people now, they never work for WWE, but they're agents. So in this vein, these people, especially some of the ones in the beginning, were very loyal to Vince, worked for Vince for many, many years. As a matter of fact, some of them worked for his father and then worked for Junior. So Vince giving these agents a job as an agent is him being loyal to them. As a matter of fact, say what you will about Vince, certain people were just getting $500 a week just to get $500 a week back in the day, whether they worked or not. So the Gareas, the Lanzas, the Slaughters, the Pattersons, the Brooklyn Brawler, I'm going in with the Jay Strongbows, Briscoes. There's tons of people that Vince had kept employed as agents, now known as producers, in order to still, number one, hopefully pass their knowledge along the younger wrestlers, but also give them an income in their post-wrestling retirement years. Because if you wrestle 20 to 25 years, you're not really going to, you're aged out of a lot of like 9-to-5 jobs and other stuff, and you probably don't want one anyway after 20, 30 years of doing this. So I just wanted to give context to that.
I want to add as well. Okay, so I'll ask you in a second what makes a really great agent in a second, but for a bad agent, I'm going to figure it's going to be something to do with obviously giving bad advice, not knowing your character, just being stuck in either the past or you know, not moving with the times, let's say, and just trying to, I don't know, abdominal stretches for 20 minutes, who knows. And also, I want to make mention of this. Some agents, for, you know, all the wrestlers I've talked to over the years, and one of the questions I used to ask was, what was the best and worst road agent? And one of the reasons people would pick a worse road agent would be that they were, one, a stooge for the office, and two, would basically never give the boys a break. You know, always try and find them or put them down or whatever it was, that kind of thing. And that would be in like the D list tier, whereas I'm sure, in fact, why don't I ask you, what makes an A grade agent?
Well, I got to give a little bit more context to this, because you know why? Most of these agents are pretty powerless in a lot of ways. They do not take chances. Once again, they're getting a check from Vince each and every week.
If they get blamed as well, if a bad match happens, the agent gets blamed.
They get blamed for everything. So you have a lot of agents, and that's probably going to be a theme over and over and over again, that really have no power, that really are just avatars for upper management and Vince. They're really just reading off what they want out of the production meeting. That's all they're doing. And then they're there to put guardrails up in a way, for good or bad, that they don't seem to exist today from the spots we see in Botch Watch, and other things. But they also are there to create the guardrails to make sure you don't have people doing 17 DDTs. Everybody's working an arm. The finishes are all the same. So there was a semblance of coordination amongst the agents too. What do you got tonight? What are you doing in your thing? So not only would you have the agent meet with the talent for the match, but more times than not, the agents would all kind of interact throughout the day to make sure that they're not overlapping the same spots, finishes, moves, whatever. Even guys having the same trunks in a match or the same tights. That was a big no-no back then. But let's start with Garea. Garea was my agent for many, many matches, especially on house shows. I'd say early on especially. You have tiers of agents too. We're going to get into the Pattersons and the Fifth Finleys and what they specialized in as well, because they all had their own thing. But Garea would just, there's a lot of stuff too that when I look back on it, when we were talking about this morning, that it needs to go both ways. The agent's obviously going to bring stuff up from his time, his era. You know, I haven't seen in a while. You know, it's never been done before. You know why people haven't done this in a while or anything like that. You have to listen and hear them out, because everybody who has experience in wrestling does have something positive to offer you with less experience, much less experience in the business. So there is respect for the position. Let's just say that. When I look at an agent like Garea or anybody else, the personal stuff, I still try to respect the position they have. And also, like you said, they're going to get yelled at way more than I'm going to get yelled at. I'm going to get the silent treatment and maybe not booked again for a little bit, but they have to hear Vince each and every week relentlessly. But with Garea, he would definitely like have ideas that were very, very, very outdated in a way. And there were some times where the outdated stuff, I was like, ooh, let's go the Memphis Gold route. No one's seen it. Let's rehash it 40 years later, and it's new again. And I valued that. But Tony and I also had, obviously, from the show, Tony and I also had, a rapport or, back and forth kind of digs and stuff. And he would always end it with that snatch on my forearm. Hey, what are you, smartass? And usually what that would come into he was pitching a sunset flip, I think, for a good 18 months in my matches, right? So after a while, I would go up and he would be like, he'd have the thing, he'd look at it, and he'd be like, oh, big surprise, you're not going over. He'd start jabbing me right away. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I said, I'm such a huge fan of Rick Martel. Can you get his autograph for me? Hey, son of a bitch. He'd walk away. But then, like, sometimes I would go up and he'd be like, oh, I want you to do this, that, the other thing. I go, sunset flip? Hey, what are you, smartass? And then just walk away. But sometimes, dude, on a house show, we did a sunset flip finish in the first match, and the people popped, and they got a huge reaction. He was a Cheshire cat backstage. Hey, come here. I told you. And I was like, yeah, you're right. First match, sunset flip. I was excited. I was like, that's cool. And then everything after that, another 18 months of like, it worked there. Do it again. Like he wanted every finish of my match to be a sunset flip. So, but with that being said, like I said, I enjoyed the interaction with Garea, but also I do agree with Shane Douglas in the way that he didn't really he didn't take any chances. He didn't say, let's try this out there. Let's do it. It was literally just, let's all cash our checks and just get through this week.
Great.
Can you give me a difference between C and D, please?
D is completely useless, a total stooge, always trying to fine you and that kind of thing. C would be someone who was maybe a bit indifferent or the advice wouldn't be the greatest. B would be someone who was pretty good at that job. A would be amazing.
Man, he's right between a C and a D because, like I said, there were some times where it was like, oh, wow, I can use that again. So I'd put Tony at a C. Now, was he a stooge? 100%. Every agent, that's what they're there for. He didn't volunteer. I really want to get heat with the boys. But that's what you're there for. Ear to the ground. Listen. Make sure they're not saying anything off-brand for WWF or WWE. Did someone say something about Vince? Did someone say something about who Vince favors? Dude, it's eggshells from the time you go in there to the time you leave.
Jack Lanza.
Jack was fun to work with. He was cool. House shows were the best because even if you didn't go along, Lanza on a Sunday afternoon house show was gold to me and Dreamer and everybody else because all Lanza wanted to do was get out of there as soon as possible and get to the next town. And Jack's best thing, and we did it on purpose a couple of times, we went over our time a couple of minutes, because they were still tracking time and trying to see. And when we weren't going home, Lanza would walk out into the aisle and pull his tie. And then sometimes even be like, hey, take it home. Take it home. I got to get it to the next town. Mm-hmm. He'd literally interfere in the match. Another thing about Jack that I love, but at the time it was frustrating, like that the fix is in, even more so than wrestling finishes. Jack, Dreamer and I were in the agent office one time, which was doubled as a locker room. It wasn't like we snuck into a dedicated room. Lanza had papers on top of his briefcase, and this was a Friday night house show, and he had already written the agent reports for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday show before they even happened. And Triple H, there were so many signs in the audience, and he got the biggest pop of the night. And then we read Dreamer versus Ray or Dreamer versus Stevie, and it was like good for what it was. I was like, this son of a bitch reads the Wrestling Observer, doesn't he?
D?
But he would also, no, not a D. He's also a C because when it came down to actually agenting the matches, Jack, and was he a stooge? 1,000%. They are. But Jack also would give, especially for tag team stuff, because he was one half of the Blackjacks. He would give some, when Dreamer and I tagged, he would give us some really good little things and explain. You have to think too, these guys are advanced age, even back then. These guys are traveling. We talked about on the Patreon, you hit a wall when you travel so much and then you're done. There's no doubt in my mind, a lot of these guys hit the wall, wanted to get in, do their job, cash their check, and then leave. But I refuse to believe that they didn't have anything to offer me, knowledge-wise, psychology-wise, anything at all. I would still, to ask questions, I would still, for Tony, Jack, and everybody else, try to, and sometimes they would be bothered. But that's the point of being a young wrestler. Bother the veterans and ask them questions. And maybe in the end, they respected me a little bit, because a lot of guys and girls would just ignore them and brush them off. I see value in everybody in that position.
Next one is Sergeant Slaughter. I am right in saying that he was an agent for a while, wasn't he?
Yo, he agented a few matches. Yeah, he agented a few of my matches. And I was trying to get him to agent our match that we had that we're going to talk about and have a watch along, the match we had in Washington. So that was good, because then I was going to shoot down all the ideas from the agent, but not the talent. If this, you want to talk about some weird, it's a fun thing. At that point, I was just trying to have fun for everything I could do. I would call Sarge, and I'm not sorry about the Stooge thing. Like I said, I'm sure if Vince asked him something that a wrestler said, he would tell him if he said it. I don't think he outwardly tried to gain favor by listening to everything that everybody said. But I would give him a B, because Sarge really did try. He would give you different things. Sarge was great, because Sarge would give you the advice. He would kind of try to know what you do. Can't pay attention to everybody. Tried to know what you do, what kind of stuff you had. He would ask you, like, how many times have you worked with this guy? You know what I mean? All right, we had this many matches. Okay, well, they probably seen a lot. Let's try it. Sarge would really try to workshop it. And then also, of course, you asked the Sergeant Slaughter stories. You asked the stories about winning the title from the Warrior, what it was like. I couldn't resist. Bulletproof limo, bulletproof vest. What was that like? And he would be very gracious and give me answers. So for me, it was like my career was like a big convention signing at times for free.
Pat Patterson. Now, best I know about Pat is that did he only do the main events?
He only did the main events, but he was a lot. I think agents and other people went to him. I went to him a couple times for finishes. Pat was if you watch the WrestleMania 6 match, that's all Pat Patterson. He put that together, but especially the finishes. He would be really great at putting it together. Pat was one of those guys that would work with the main eventers, but he would also choose to work with who he wanted to work with. In other words, he's one of those guys. And you know what? We know there's scandals out there. We know there's all this other stuff going. We're strictly talking about the experience of a wrestler, agent, producer, and how that works. But Pat is definitely up there in the Mount Rushmore already. So definitely he's one of the Mount Rushmore guys.
Hey, there we go. Fit Finley.
I have a personal just affection for Fit. He's a great guy. He's awesome. And Fit was given something that a lot of agents didn't touch before that. After that, yeah, the women's division. Fit Finley is solely responsible from a creative, from a structural standpoint, and from a coaching standpoint. He is the linchpin for the success, not of the Divas, but of the women's wrestling division of WWE. Solely give him credit, and give him credit for teaching me how to work with Victoria and Trish and all the females and show myself in a different light while still being some kind of viable threat for the babyface women. Fit was definitely, that WrestleMania 19 match was myself, Fit, and the three women all putting that together, but it's Fit's guidance, Fit putting it together, making it fun, all that stuff. And he has spent, countless hours when I was there, working with them in the ring during the day to make them better wrestlers, better athletes, and overall better workers. He's a Mount Rushmore guy.
Brooklyn Brawler, Steve Lombardi. Was he ever strictly an agent or was he more Was he more about backstage production, I guess?
He and Harvey Whippleman were the utility guys. I don't know. They may have agent in matches. You have them both on the list. I'd say it's an N/A, not applicable for either one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, if I'm wrong, if you have agent in matches, I'm sorry. He's never agent in one of mine. Steve and Harvey were the guys where under the gun, like, we need this in an hour. We need these clothes, this prop, this thing. We need this set up. And of course, both of these gentlemen were stooges. Their job was to keep their ear to the ground. And this was not them volunteering and I've always wanted to be a stooge for the office. No, this is them put in a thankless position, in many thankless positions. And then because of their loyalty, Harvey Whippleman's a manager and he's managing Sid Vicious and other people. And then going back into the office role, Brooklyn Brawler, he's a Sergeant Slaughter after Sarge became an agent. I always bring my gear. You need me for a match, I can go out there and I can put anybody over.
Next one. Now, this guy might be a bit before your time, Rene Goulet.
He was, but yeah. Shane speaks pretty highly of him, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about Rene Goulet from a outwardly over the top kind of negative experience from any workers.
Next on the list is Dusty Rhodes.
Never had him as an agent.
Okay.
The only time I had him as an agent per se was for that promo where I returned to ECW after my vocal cord implant throat surgeries. And that's the one where he cut the promo. But that's an edict that Vince had put down. So would I have loved to have Dusty as an agent? Absolutely. I hear about these NXT kids when he was there and the people there in WWE now say what an amazing coach he was. So yeah, I'm sorry I missed out on that.
Very briefly, Jim Neidhart was never an agent, was he?
Not when I was there.
No. Okay. Next one, I think this was too late as well, Chief Jay Strongbow.
Way too late.
Yeah.
Way too late.
I think he maybe left like 95 or something. I just thought I'd throw him in there.
Now, I think Chief gave Kevin Nash the best advice about not overspending or buying a bigger house, or why would you buy a new car? You run a new car every week. Like, he gave some outward advice outside the ring that I can appreciate and anybody can get benefit from.
Jerry Brisco. Now, I just have to make mention that there's a joke out there, I think he even said it, is that he sort of maybe was one of the boys, and I think the way he explained it was that, hell, I'm the only agent that they drug test, which I thought was an amazing line. Jerry Brisco.
Jerry, I would put in probably, I'd have to put him in an A. Maybe not the Mount Rushmore, but you would talk about just so much knowledge in singles and tag team wrestling and what he did. And also, he was one of the boys. So the communication back and forth, like Sarge was great, but Sarge was very measured and professional. Jack and Tony you could tell they were completely office, so you kind of had to be careful. Jerry could have been the best worker of all and been the biggest stooge because he disarmed you. You could tell him anything, but I don't think he was. I think that Jerry obviously was loyal to Vince. As a matter of fact, him and Pat being, the fodder for him as the Stooges, that was probably a rib on real life that they did tell him. You have to think too, Vince McMahon Sr. and Jr. supplied these guys with careers, houses, cars, a lot of income, and they're still getting that income. Plus, Jerry's on TV in a featured role during the Attitude Era. Of course, you're going to be loyal to that guy. So I never hold that against if I say, "Good Lord, Vince is an idiot." If someone called you an idiot, I'd be like, James, this guy you think you're a friend is calling you an idiot. So I'm a stooge for James Romero. But Jerry's an A because Jerry would give a lot of different things. And also Jerry at one point would do that fit thing and get into the ring and kind of show you a little bit of stuff. So I think that puts it over the top.
The next one, now, we haven't talked about it on this channel. I know you've mentioned it with Rene Dupree. It's up to you how much you want to go into it, or we're just going to strictly talk about his performance as an agent as Dean Malenko.
Well, I'll give the context, and I said it on the Patreon pre-show, that nobody should be suffering like that. I don't wish that on anybody. He's fighting Parkinson's, I think last year or the year before. He actually got brain surgery to try to reduce the shake, so hopefully that's a success. Is he still agenting in AEW, or is he done completely?
I've got a feeling he's still with AEW. I don't know how much he's working with them, but I think
I
he's
hope
still
Tony Khan's
hired
getting
with
him a
them.
check. I hope he's getting a check every week, and he's not having to travel beyond, because it does that kind of stuff. I have Parkinson's in my family, and I see how as the day goes on and you tire, that progresses pretty badly. So hopefully he's relaxing. Dean and I I talked about the story in the original ECW where I didn't know the etiquette. I sat in the chair. It was his chair. He kicked me out of the chair. I don't hold
That wasn't the
against
story,
him.
though. It wasn't his chair. There was like 100 chairs. And he just wants to kick you out of that chair.
Well, I still have Stockholm syndrome.
I know.
I'm sorry. So I'm still indoctrinated.
I'm your advocate, basically.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But, I told the story about Dean and kind of taking a very lazy approach to being an agent and just kind of not taking things seriously sometimes. And then there was that one against Val Venus where, he just said, you and Val, 8 minutes, walks away. I asked him, well, who's going over? And he just kind of rolled his eyes. And I was just like, dude, don't disrespect me like that. That's just, Dean was checked out. Hopefully people change. Hopefully I hear he's a great coach in AEW, at least back when he was there on a week-to-week basis. That's fine. Everybody changes. Everybody has their down moments, their up moments. I don't know what Dean was going through at home, personal life, whether he just got yelled at by Vince. We don't know that. More than likely he got yelled at by Vince. So we can assume that. So I don't hold any grudge. All this stuff is very objective. I'm very much removed from it. There's no personal feelings. But I would give Dean as an agent, at least for me, a D.
Next one is, now I don't know if this is too late for him, Jamie Noble. Or for you, I'm sorry.
He only had that match that Shelton Benjamin and I had in England. I told the story before that he threw me under the bus because he told us everything we needed to do. We did everything. The writing on the loose leaf sheet, we did everything that was needed to do. And then Vince did not like it, and he instantly said he had nothing to do with it. And that's why he's still there. So I give Jamie a D.
Next one, Billy Kidman. Now, just to
Never
add this,
had him. Never had him as an agent.
Was he always SmackDown, Billy? On the SmackDown?
I'm not quite sure, but I think Billy, this was when, like Jamie, I don't know why he had us, maybe just to see, or it was an easy match to agent. But I think a lot of times they try to put them in where they fit. So Billy Kidman might have been an agent for the cruiserweights. He was definitely the guy in Garea doing the Jerry Brisco or Bruce Pritchard thing with the times. I remember that, right? Billy was somebody they featured. He was sitting up there in Garea, making sure the matches and the format were on time. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I just remember that story on WWE.com. But never had him as an agent, never really interacted with him as much, even as a talent. Hello, goodbye, and that was the end of it. So that would be if we have another tier of, N/A, non-applicable, I think that's in the tier list to make Chris do extra rendering.
Mike Rotunda, IRS.
Mike was really a lot of fun to work with. He really was, and he had a mind. You can kind of look back at it now. Mike was pigeonholed with a lot of gimmicks that were very on the nose type. Captain Mike, what a captain's had. The Varsity Club, which made him an awesome heel. Then the IRS character, of course. But I kind of see where the Wyatts get their creativity and their mind from by dealing with Mike as an agent. That's very much a genetic thing. Had a great mind, very laid back. One of my favorite things to do would be Mike would always sit on the one of the black production boxes with his sheet talking to wrestlers. We'd talk our match over, and every single time I couldn't resist it. I'd look left, look right, and he's like, what's wrong, Stevie? I go, look at all these tax cheats. And he would just laugh, But he would give a lot. And he's one of those guys I would also ask questions about, like, how would you do this? And especially heel stuff. Like, he went from such a white meat baby face to a sour, bitter heel in the Varsity Club and really came into his own. So I would ask him questions about, like, what kind of, like, what brought that out of you or whatever, because I was trying to bring out different things in the match and everything. You don't have much time to sit there, and you're there. They give you the match. You work on it for a couple hours. You check in with the agent after 4:00 production meeting to make sure it didn't change. And then you kind of check in right before, and the agent's in Gorilla, and then you come back and hopefully you get feedback. Because when I come back, and a lot of these agents, you could tell when they had it from being on the road for the week and everything. That's it. There's no perfect match. When I come back, I want you to grab me and go, when you do this, step forward with your right foot instead of your left. I want you to really like just pick me apart when I come back in a good way, not like you're a piece of crap. And Mike was really good about that. So is the next guy that we're going to talk about.
Grade for IRS.
Great for IRS. I would give him a B.
B. Ted DiBiase, his Money Inc. partner as well.
Yeah, it's hard. It's just as hard to do. The Mount Rushmore is one thing, but the A to the B, the criteria is such a thin line, just like C to D sometimes. But Ted, I had him for a couple times. We would make him do the $1 Million Man laugh before we would listen to any advice he would give us. It was fun to do that kind of stuff.
I was going to say, did you have to jab him to do that, or was he just more than happy to oblige you?
I would not let up at all. Never. Never. I'm not listening to a word you say until you do it, Ted. Ha ha ha! So much fun. But he was really good. And he was really, the thing about Mike and Ted, about IRS and Ted DiBiase, is they're very calm, low-key type of presentation with it. Not lazy, but it would feel like a discussion, not like they're talking at you. And Ted, of course, the thing with Ted, obviously, he wants to be able to relate to that, but there's also that generational gap in a way, too, where Ted, and then let's talk about all these people, including Steamboat. The adjustment to know you're going into, it's like if I went to AEW and agent in matches, getting to know everybody, trying to figure out and trying to bring yourself up to speed with modern culture, because even though the tried and true things always work, you still have to bend your knee a little bit to the current generation, the current product, and let them try things. And Ted would be pretty open about that, but I could see sometimes it wouldn't translate, nor should it sometimes, because his psychology is so based and so much better than mine could ever hope to be, that I treated each match as trying to be a classroom for me to learn from the agents. And it's all up to their energy level, their tolerance level, and if they're just ready to be home. Those are factors that, or they just didn't care. And it's just a check. Ted wasn't one of those guys. Once again, he's a B.